Is it permissible to make Kiddush on whiskey or vodka instead of wine? And is a revi'it required if one does so?
The question regarding on what one may make Kiddush is already discussed in the Talmud Bavli, Masechet Pesachim, Klof Zayin Amud Aleph, 107a. And the first thing to note here is that in Eretz Yisrael this was not a question at all, and therefore it was not discussed, because wine was readily available. There was no shortage of wine, and wine was also reasonably priced. In Bavel, wine was frequently expensive and not always available. What was much more readily available were different types of shechar, of beer or cider, depending on what it was made from. The common kind of beer or cider in Bavel, in Babylon, was made from dates, but there were also other kinds of beer that, as it is mentioned here on this page 107a in the Talmud Bavli, in Masechet Pesachim. It also should be noted that with regards to Havdalah, as opposed to Kiddush, Havdalah, which we make at the end of Shabbat or Yom Tov, here the Talmud states explicitly that it is mutar. It is permissible to make Havdalah on Hamar Medina. Hamar Medina is a drink such as beer that is the common and shall we say highly regarded, or at least regarded as something you would offer to a guest, for example, and something that is drunk on a regular basis in that country, not something unusual or of no consequence. In a place where no wine is available, and this is a central point, where no wine is available, or wine might be available but is very expensive, in such a case, the Talmud here states explicitly that Havdalah may be made on Harma Medina. So that would include nowadays things like beer, and some claim even that you could claim that coffee today is a Harma Medina. It is something that you invite someone over to your home for a cup of coffee. It is something that you, when you meet someone, perhaps you agree to meet someone in a cafe, you have a discussion, you have a meeting over a cup of coffee. That's called Hamar Medina, something which is commonly drunk and seen as something of some importance, as opposed to what? As opposed to something like water. Even if a person claims that I only drink water and that's all that I wish to drink. Nevertheless, that, and maybe many people feel that way, that is not Hamar Medina. That is with regards to Havdalah. With regards to Kiddush, there is a mahaloketh. Some Rishonim hold that one may make Kiddush on shechar, on beer or Hamar Medina or similar beverages, but almost all agree that this is specifically with reference to Kiddush in the morning, not in the evening. It needs to be understood that the Kiddush we make at night, at the beginning of Shabbat or the beginning of Yom Tov, is the real Kiddush. This is really what can be or should be referred to as Kiddush, because there we do not only say the Baracha Borei Pri Hagafen on the wine, we also say a further Baracha, Mekadesh HaShabbat, according to the Nusach of Bavel, or Mekadesh Yisrael Yom HaShabbat, according to the Nusach of Eretz Yisrael. And that Baracha, that second Baracha, is the Kiddush, in fact, because after all, saying Borei Pri Hagafen on some wine that you wish to drink, that, of course, is not Kiddush. You are required to make a Baracha on drinking wine any day of the year, any day of the week. If you wish to drink a glass of wine at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday, then you are equally required to say the Bracha Borei Pri Hagafen. Therefore, it should be readily understood that the Kiddush, what we refer to as Kiddush in the morning of Shabbat or Yom Tov, is not really Kiddush. It is a much less of a Chovah and the halachic status of that Kiddush is very different from that of Kiddush Shel Halayla, the Kiddush we make at the beginning of the Shabbat or the Yom Tov. In fact, that is why it's often referred to as Kiddush HaRabbah, the great Kiddush, which of course is the opposite of the fact. The fact is that it's not really a Kiddush at all, and in order to nevertheless give it a certain status, we refer to it as the great Kiddush. That is what we call Lashon Sareh Nahor. In other words, in the same way that in the time of Hazal they referred to a person who was blind, who could not see, as someone of great light, someone as it were who could see extremely well. In the same way we refer to something which is not really Kiddush, in order to do it some honor and give it a certain standing, we refer to it as Kiddush HaRabbah. But in fact all we're doing is saying the Kiddush, the real bracha that we say, apart from perhaps some pesukim that we add beforehand, which of course is not a hovah, that is a minhag. It's a very nice minhag, but it's not a hovah. The Kiddush is the bracha. And therefore, again, if you're making a bracha on wine, you say Brei Piragafen, that's just a bracha on wine. In fact, that is not, should not strictly speaking be referred to as Kiddush. We refer to it as Kiddush because it became the practice already in the time of the Talmud to make Kiddush in the morning as well. So, having clarified that there is a very real difference between the Kiddush, the real Kiddush of the night, and the less major Kiddush, shall we say, of the morning, it also needs to be understood, therefore, that we are much more mekel, we are more lenient regarding certain aspects of the mitzvah of Kiddush in the morning. And for this reason, there are some Rishonim who hold, some Rishonim such as the Rosh, for example, who hold that one may make Kiddush on Shechar, on beer, for example. This is what the Talmud discusses here in Pesachim Daf Chof Zayin. The question is asked, Mahu lekadushe ashikara? How is it permissible to make Kiddush on Shechar? This is being asked in Bavel, again, because wine was not always available. But the question here, so it appears from the Sugya in the Talmud, the question here was being asked with regards to Kiddush at night, not in the morning. And we find here the opinion of Rav, for example, that one may not make Kiddush on Shechar. And there are others who disagreed, who felt that you could make Kiddush on Shechar. But again, this was being the argument, this discussion was with regards to the more major Kiddush of the evening. With regards to the Kiddush of the morning, there is much more room to be lenient. As we find here also in the Sugya on Daf Kuf Zayin, it relates that Lewi sent once a special kind, a very outstanding kind of beer to Rabbi as a gift. A kind of beer that was prepared in a certain way, which made from dates, which had an amazing taste and flavor, and therefore Rabbi was very impressed with it, and he said, when he drank it, he said, Kirom zeh, such a drink as this, a beverage such as this, Ra'ui l'kadesh alo, u'lomar alo, kol shiroth v'tishbahot sheba'olam. In other words, he said, such a beverage as this, even though it is not wine, it is worthy of being used for Kiddush. It goes on to relate, however, that this being made of dates affected Rabbi's digestion, and therefore he said, well, maybe it's not such a good idea, because something which causes digestive problems is something perhaps we should not use for Kiddush. But that cannot be said, of course, for regular beer today, or for that matter for things like drinks such as whiskey or vodka. And therefore, because the Kiddush of the morning is something we can be much more lenient about, and because of the fact that in Eastern Europe, countries such as Russia, Lithuania, Poland, Ukraine, wine was, as in ancient times in Bavel, similarly in these countries, wine was not always readily available, or was very expensive. Therefore, the widespread minhag became that in the morning people would make Kiddush on on that which was certainly a hamar medina, that was the kind of national or accepted drink that people would drink. Not wine. Wine was not something that most people drank as a rule, but vodka, of course, in these countries was the most common kind of alcoholic and therefore more important beverage. Perhaps they also had whiskey. Do not know for a fact if whiskey was so common in those countries. Vodka certainly was, and perhaps also brandy. So we find that in those countries it became the standard practice that drinks such as vodka would be used for Kiddush in the morning. It also should be understood and reiterated that this entire discussion refers only to a situation where wine is not readily available. This is clear from the Sugya in the Gemara Masechet Pesachim, and this is what Rashbam there in his Perush writes explicitly twice, that the discussion pertains to a place or a town, an area, b'makom she'en yain, as the Rashbam writes. And this is also what we find in the Taz on the Shulchan Aruch in Siman Resh Ayin Beth. We have in Seif Teth, the Shulchan Aruch writes as follows: B'makom she'en yain masui, where wine is not readily available, yesh omerim shemekadeshim al shechar v'shar mashkim hus min hamayim. There are those who say you may make Kiddush on shechar, on beer. And here it's referring even to the evening. There are Rishonim who understood this, and it is possible to understand it from the Sugya. The Sugya is not, it's not absolutely clear from the Sugya that this is not so. And there are those who say that you may not make Kiddush at night on beverages such as beer. The Rosh writes, and he quotes, the Rosh is quoted here specifically, Shulchan Aruch writes, balayla lo yikadesh ala shechar, at night one should not use beer for Kiddush, ela ala path, because it is also possible to make Kiddush on the bread, instead of saying Borei Priya Gefen, and then the Kiddush, instead you say Hamotzi Lechem min haaretz, and the Nusach of the Kiddush, Mekadesh HaShabbat, or Mekadesh Yisrael B'Yom HaShabbat, and then you eat from the bread, just as you would drink from the wine. That is with regards to the evening, says the Rosh. With regards to the morning, B'boker yoter tov lekadesh ala shechar. In the morning, it is rather than making Kiddush on bread if you do not have wine, where technically you could do so. But the Rosh says it is better not to do so, better to use beer. Why? Tov yoter tov lekadesh ala shechar, shivarech alo shehakol, and therefore you would make the bracha shehakol, of course, at the beginning of the meal on Shabbat morning. Kodem birkat hamosi. If you do not do so and you say simply Hamotzi Lechem min haaretz, which would be in place of the Borei Priya Gefen that you would normally say on Kiddush in the morning, en kan shum shinui. In such a case, it is impossible to recognize or to know that you made Kiddush at all, because if you were to sit down again to such a meal as you're about to have now on Shabbat morning, if you were to sit down to such a meal any other day of the week, and you wanted to start with the bread, you would also say Hamotzi Lechem min haaretz, and you would start the meal, and of course there's no Kiddush involved in that. Similarly, if on Shabbat morning you simply say Hamotzi and begin to eat, it's as if, at least it seems, people would perhaps get the impression at least that there was no Kiddush. It's not necessary to make Kiddush. So the Rosh says, seeing that it is possible, certainly in the morning, to rely on the understanding based on the Talmud that one may make Kiddush on shechar, on beer, in the morning it is better to do so rather than make Kiddush on bread, in which case it's as if Kiddush is being swept aside or overlooked. And the Shulchan Aruch writes about this with Divrei Ta'amhim, and this reasoning and this statement of the Rosh is eminently reasonable and sensible. And this, I believe, also is the correct halakha, that in the morning one can make Kiddush on shechar, and I think as I will explain in a moment, certainly also on vodka or whiskey. But again, this is only where wine is not available. And this is what the Taz writes. The Taz writes as follows. He says, if wine is available, one should certainly use wine. And here he is referring even to the Kiddush of the morning. Afilu bayom. In other words, even during the day, he says one should definitely use wine if it is available. Ela de mikol makom. Nevertheless, im hayayin biyoker, if the wine that is available is very expensive, such as where we are, says the Taz, which he refers to Poland, the Ukraine, etc. En mahadarim ahar yain. It is not the normal practice nowadays. This, of course, is being written some 350 or more years ago. En mahadarin ahar yain kewan she'en hiyuv gamur kamo sheyesh hiyuv balayla, because the morning kiddush, as we explained, is not does not have the same status, and therefore we can be less strict regarding certain aspects of the kiddush in the morning. V'sareh bechach, and therefore it is sufficient to make kiddush on shechar, on beer, or something similar. Umishum hachem, for this reason, lo naharu afilu hagedolim b'medinathanu levarech al hayayin bayom, and therefore even the more important rabbanim, it is not their practice as a rule to make kiddush on wine in the morning, because wine was not always available, or it was expensive, or both. Usually these things go together. Umishum varech gam bayom al hayayin wadai oseh min hamuvhar. However, it is certainly true that he who does make kiddush even during the day on wine is certainly doing the more proper and the best is taking the best course of action. So we see clearly from the Taz that even in his part of the world, where wine was less readily available and more expensive than it is for most people in most countries today, the Taz nevertheless states explicitly that even with regards to the Kiddush Bayom during the day, it is certainly more correct to use wine. And I certainly believe this to be true. However, the question regarding vodka and whiskey needs to be addressed for a number in more detail for a number of reasons. First of all, it seems to me that beverages such as whiskey, brandy, vodka, etc. are not only equally good or on the same level as shechar, as beer, but are on a higher level. I think one could make the argument that these beverages, whiskey, vodka, brandy, etc., are on the same level as wine. The fact of the matter is that they are usually, very often, more expensive even than wine. And they are certainly considered to be hashuv. They certainly are considered to be something mechubad, something of significance. People give gifts to one another of such beverages, and people offer such beverages to their guests, or people break out bottles of these kinds of drinks on special occasions. All of this shows clearly that things such as whiskey and vodka are important beverages, mashkaot hashuvim, and they have, in my view, the same status as wine, except for the fact that Hazal specifically mention the importance of wine. And also we have the famous pasuk that yain yasamach levav enosh, and other pasukim referring to the importance and the beauty of wine. And therefore I'm not suggesting that one can or one should choose to use drinks such as whiskey or brandy or vodka in place of wine where wine is available. Where wine is available, it is clear that one should prefer the wine, make kiddush on the wine, both in the evening and in the morning. With regards to the evening, one cannot make, even though there is such an opinion, but there are many opinions amongst the Rishonim, and the Shulchan Aruch also does not clearly decide in either direction regarding this question of whether one can, if there is no wine, whether one can make Kiddush at night on other beverages such as beer or perhaps something like whiskey. At night this is not possible because there is another possibility, and that is to make Kiddush on the bread. And that is certainly a viable option, which is explicitly also mentioned in the Talmud. With regards to the morning, where the issue is of a different status altogether, a different order of magnitude, you could say, therefore it is possible where wine is not readily available, or alternately if a person is allergic to wine or wine somehow disagrees with him, but a drink such as whiskey does not, in such a situation, or where a person finds himself in a place where wine might be available in that place, but it works out now, the fact is that right now he is Shabbat morning, and he has nothing but whiskey. Some people, of course, would say, well, he's a very lucky man that he has whiskey, and that's exactly the point, because whiskey is something that is very highly regarded. It is frequently also very expensive, something certainly that people do not take lightly, and therefore if wine is not available, or if wine is available but in this particular case he can't get his hands on wine right now, for instance he's in some remote location and all he has is the whiskey, or again if wine or grape juice do not agree with him for whatever reason, one may make Kiddush on such beverages as whiskey, vodka, brandy, etc. The other point that needs to be discussed is the shi'ur, the amount. Because after all, when making Kiddush on wine, we require a glass, a cup that holds a revi'ith halo, which is something like 80 plus cc in volume. I say 80 plus because there are a number of different views on the topic, so let's say for argument's sake 80 plus cc in volume, which is approximately the amount that one finds in many disposable cups, for example. We need that amount of wine, and then one should drink lechatchila. Normally one would drink most, at least, of that revi'ith. But if making Kiddush on whiskey, for example, certainly the vast majority of people do not drink that amount, and cannot drink that amount of whiskey. So the question becomes, can one make Kiddush on a smaller amount? And some Posakim have pointed to the fact that the Taz in Siman Resh Yod, regarding the question of whether one makes a baracha ahrona, such as borena fashoth, on drinking any drink less than the shi'ur of a revi'ith, less than that amount, the Taz says that this din does not apply to drinks such as vodka and whiskey, because he says that these drinks people do not drink. It is not the normal way of the world to drink such an amount, a revi'ith of whiskey or vodka. Many people would become drunk from doing so or feel unwell, and it is certainly not the norm. The norm is a much smaller amount, and therefore he says if you drink the normal amount that people drink when drinking such beverages, you also should make the bracha borena fashoth. That is the opinion of the Taz. There are many poskim who disagree with him. But that is with regards to the bracha of making a bracha ahrona. With regards to Kiddush, it seems to me that his svara, the svara of the Taz, is very correct, certainly at least with regards to how much one requires in order to make Kiddush on such a beverage. Again, assuming that we're talking about that situation that we described before. We're talking about Shabbat morning or Yom Tov in the morning, and we're talking about a situation where wine is not an option. In such a situation, I believe a person can make Kiddush on vodka, whiskey, brandy, and the like. And I believe a shi'ur of a revi'ith is not necessary. There are, again, several posakim who say that it is necessary. The Mishnah Bra also says so. But practically speaking, this seems unenforceable, shall we say. It doesn't seem reasonable. You can't tell people that they have to drink most of a revi'ith of a cup of whiskey. And in practice, this is not what people do. There are many people, many Ashkenazim, because again, this is a minhag that grew up. The practice of making Kiddush on such beverages is something that grew up in that part of the world. There are many people in the world who make Kiddush as a matter of course on Shabbat morning on whiskey, brandy, vodka, perhaps gin, and other such beverages. And I've never seen anyone make Kiddush on such a beverage on a Revi'ith. I've never seen this at all. I have seen hundreds of times people make Kiddush on a much smaller amount, the kind of glass that one normally uses for such beverages, or the amount that one uses for such beverages. So if one is doing so, one may make Kiddush on the amount that is normally drunk by an average person of that particular beverage. Again, this is in a situation where wine is not an option for various reasons, as we explained. I should also mention that the opinion of the Rambam is that it is only with regards to Havdalah that one may use Sheikhar or Hamam Medina, such other beverages other than wine. But with regards to Kiddush, even during the day, Rambam does not agree that this is possible at all. So for that reason as well, because of the view of the Rambam, and the fact that wine is also a special beverage mentioned in the Torah, in the Tanakh, in the Nevi'im, and the Ketuvim many times as a unique and very important beverage. It is also a beverage produced from one of the Shivat HaMinim, from the grape, which is one of the Shivat HaMinim, the 7 species of Eretz Yisrael. And because of the fact that it is not clear that it is in fact mutar to make Kiddush on anything but wine, for all these reasons, wine should always be preferred, both in the evening and in the morning.
The production of these videos and maintaining this channel demands much time and money. If you enjoyed this video, please show your appreciation and support. To make a donation, please go to www.machonshilo.org and press the PayPal button, which appears on the upper right-hand side of the home page. To sponsor a video or purchase Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael, please write us at office@machonshilo.org.